If we could step inside of a time machine and go back 100,000 years, what we would find is that humans lived in small groups or bands of hunter-gatherers. Now, these hunter-gatherers, they were nomadic. They followed their food sources, they lived off of the land, and they would find shelters by creating makeshift tents or natural shelters in caves or forests. And their lives, they were very hard. You could very easily get sick, get an infection, die. It was a hard life. Everything was a struggle for survival. And yet, at the same time, anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherers, these are humans who live today like our ancestors did 100,000 years ago, they have found that they have very low incidences of anxiety and depression compared to people who live in modern industrialized nations. One of the theories as to why these modern hunter-gatherers seem less susceptible to mental illness is because their lifestyle mirrors exactly how our brains evolved. So our brains evolved to live in nature and to struggle for survival. And that's what modern hunter-gatherers do. But today, our lives look nothing like that. I mean, our lives are relatively easy by comparison. If you want something to eat, do you have to go out and hunt for it and find it? No, you go to a grocery store. If you're thirsty, you don't have to go to a river. You turn on the tap. If you get sick, you go to a doctor and he'll heal you. If you're too hot or too cold, you literally change the thermostat. The intense level of comfort that we experience in developed countries is so great that we hardly ever even leave our homes. In fact, the world we live in today is something that our hunter-gatherer ancestors could hardly have imagined. But there is a downside to all of this luxury. There is a consequence to it. I don't think it's a coincidence that with the rise of creature comforts, we have also seen a significant rise in mental illness in industrialized nations. And I think the reason why this is happening is because our anxiety was really designed to help us survive. And now it's been displaced into other areas of our lives. So hunter-gatherers, they had really specific ways of living out their lives. Like, they had a very specific purpose. They knew that they were going to go out and they had to contribute to making sure that everybody was going to make it. It was clear. Make sure we have our next meal, don't die. But for us, because we can simply have our needs met very easily, well, our purpose gets a little bit more murky. And when it's murky, we tend to ask ourselves questions like, why am I here? What's the meaning of my life? And what everybody tells you is, well, you have to find your passion. You gotta do things that you're passionate about. But the problem is, passion doesn't often pay the bills. So you end up getting a job so that you can sustain yourself. But that job isn't necessarily your passion. In fact, there was a study done by Gallup in 2019 where they looked at people around the world, their job satisfaction. And what they found was 85% of people around the world hate their jobs. So what that tells you is most people, when they do their work, they're not doing something they're passionate about. They're just doing something that allows them to survive. And when you're doing something that you feel is meaningless, well, that has an impact because your life eventually feels meaningless. And this is when anxiety really manifests, because you feel out of control and then you start to worry. And it's weird because you look around and you say to yourself, oh my goodness, like, why do I feel so anxious? I have everything I need. And yet, for some reason, I am worried all the time. Well, the answer to that question is both very simple and very complex. Come with me and I'll explain to you what I mean.